You open your eyes, and the scorching sun hits your face. The smell is intense, a mixture of incense, animals, and dust. You are lying in a stone courtyard, surrounded by white limestone walls. Strange sounds come from all directions, voices speaking a language you shouldn't understand, but you understand perfectly, Aramaic, and in the background, a ritual chant that seems to come from somewhere immense. You stand up, staggering, and look around. A city of stone stretches before you, low houses with flat roofs, narrow alleyways filled with people dressed in tunics and cloaks. And then you see it. On the horizon, dominating everything, a colossal structure of white marble and gold that gleams under the sun like a sacred mountain. The Second Temple of Jerusalem. It exists, it still stands, and that means only one thing. You run toward a merchant passing by and ask for the date. He looks at you strangely. We are on the 10th day of Nisan, foreigner. Passover approaches. Your heart stops. You do the math. If the Hebrew calendar is correct, this is approximately early April. And if the temple still exists, this is before the year 70. You ask who governs Judea. Pontius Pilate, the man, answers with contempt. He has oppressed us for 7 years now, and then you understand everything. Pilate governed from 26 to 36 AD. You are somewhere between those years. And if Passover is approaching, if Pilate is still in power, if the temple still stands, there is a terrifying possibility. Jesus of Nazareth may be alive, right now, at this very moment, preaching in Galilee or already on his way to Jerusalem for his final Passover. The question is not whether you would try to meet him. The real question is, what would you do with what you know? Because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you that waking up in first century Judea with knowledge about Jesus Christ is not an advantage. It is the most impossible moral dilemma in human history. You could warn him about Judas's betrayal. You could try to prevent his arrest. You could change the course of events that would define the largest religion in the world. But should you? Prepare yourself, because this journey will confront you with a disturbing truth. Sometimes, preventing a tragedy means causing an infinitely greater catastrophe. In your first hours, you assess the situation. First century Judea is a powder keg about to explode. The Romans have occupied the land for nearly a century, ever since Pompey conquered Jerusalem in 63 BC. The Jewish population lives under a system of brutal oppression. Pilate, the Roman governor, is known for his cruelty. The historian Philo of Alexandria described him as inflexible, merciless, and of fierce temperament. He has already massacred Jews who protested. He has already desecrated the temple with Roman symbols. He has already stolen from the sacred treasury to build an aqueduct. Society is divided among factions that hate each other. The Sadducees control the temple and collaborate with Rome. The Pharisees guard the tradition and despise the collaborators. The Essenes have isolated themselves in the desert, awaiting the end of times. And the Zealots are planning an armed rebellion that, as you know, will result in the total destruction of Jerusalem in 37 years. And here is the first crucial piece of information. The regular population of Jerusalem is approximately 25 Unzern to 30 Unzern people. But during Passover, the city swells to 300 Unzerns or even 500 Unzern pilgrims coming from all across the diaspora. Jews from Babylon, from Egypt, from Rome, from Syria. It is a pressure cooker of religion, politics, and social tension. And you are in the middle of it. You have an immense advantage. You speak Aramaic fluently, and you know the culture. You can blend in, but you also carry knowledge that weighs like lead. You know who Jesus of Nazareth is, not as the inhabitants of this era know him, a controversial preacher from Galilee whom some call a prophet and others call a blasphemer. You know what he will become. The founder of a religion that will have 2 billion followers, the central figure of Western civilization, the man whose death will be celebrated and mourned for 2 millennia, and you know exactly how he is going to die. betrayed by Judas Iscariot for 30 pieces of silver, the price of a slave, tried illegally by the Sanhedrin during the night when such trials were forbidden by Jewish law itself, handed over to Pilate on charges of sedition, crucified at Golgotha, dead by 3 in the afternoon on a Friday of Passover. 3 days have passed since you arrived. It is Palm Sunday, and Jerusalem is in turmoil. The news spreads like fire. Jesus of Nazareth is entering the city, riding on a donkey, and crowds are hailing him as the Messiah, spreading palm branches in his path. You run to see, and there he is, a man of ordinary appearance, surrounded by a dozen followers and a crowd in ecstasy. Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And you watch, paralyzed by an emotion you cannot name, because you know something that no one else there knows. Within 5 days, that same crowd will be shouting, "Crucify him." Within 6 days, that man will be dead. And within 2,000 years, this moment will be remembered as the beginning of the most important week in human history. You make a decision. You need to speak to him, to warn him. But how do you approach a man surrounded by protective disciples and adoring crowds? You are nobody, a stranger without family, without clan, without letters of introduction. In first-century Jewish society, your identity is defined by your connections, and you have none. Monday, you manage to enter the temple. Jesus is there causing an uproar. He is overturning the tables of the money changers, driving out the sellers of animals for sacrifice, shouting that they have turned his father's house into a den of thieves. The temple guards watch, tense, but they do not intervene. The crowd is too large, and Jesus is too popular. You approach one of the disciples, a robust man with the hands of a fisherman. Peter, you assume. You say you have an urgent message for the master. Peter looks at you with suspicion. Who are you? Where do you come from? You improvise. I am a traveler from distant lands. I had a vision about the Rabbi of Nazareth, a vision of danger. Peter frowns. Many have visions. The master does not have time for everyone. But there is something in your urgency that makes him hesitate. Wait here. 30 minutes later, you stand before him. Jesus of Nazareth. And here is your first impossible obstacle. What do you tell him? That you are from the future? They would take you for a madman. That you had a prophetic vision? Thousands claim the same. That one of his own disciples is going to betray him? He already knows. The Gospels will record that during the Last Supper, Jesus will say, "One of you will betray me." Jesus looks at you with eyes that seem to see right through you. What do you want to tell me, stranger? His voice is calm, almost kind, and you realize something terrifying. If the accounts are correct, he already knows what is going to happen, and he is walking toward it deliberately. You stammer, "Master, there is danger. Someone close to you plans to betray you. The priests are conspiring to arrest you. Pilate will condemn you. The cross awaits you." Jesus nods slowly without surprise. "And what do you want me to do? Flee, hide, abandon the mission for which I came?" The silence between you is deafening, and here is the dilemma that tears your mind apart. According to Christian theology, the death of Jesus was not an accident or a defeat. It was the purpose, the sacrifice that would redeem humanity. If you prevent the crucifixion, are you saving a man or condemning billions of souls? Are you being merciful, or are you frustrating the divine plan? It is Tuesday. 3 days remain. Jesus continues teaching in the temple, confronting Pharisees and Sadducees, telling parables about the final judgment. And you watch, powerless, as the priests murmur among themselves, planning his arrest. You can see them. Caiaphas, the high priest, an astute politician who has survived 18 years in office, longer than any other high priest of his era. He knows that Jesus is a threat, not only religious but political. If Jesus starts a messianic movement during Passover, the Romans will respond with blood. Pilate has already massacred Galilean pilgrims before. He will do it again. Caiaphas will speak the words that will seal Jesus' fate. It is better that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish. It is a cold political calculation, but from his perspective, it has brutal logic. Protecting Jesus means risking a Roman massacre. Sacrificing him means keeping the peace. Wednesday, 2 days remain. And then you see him, Judas Iscariot, separating himself from the group of disciples, looking nervously over his shoulder, walking toward the house of Caiaphas. You know what he is about to do. He is going to negotiate the betrayal, 30 pieces of silver, the price of a slave gored by an ox according to the law of Exodus, a deliberate insult to the value of Jesus. You could follow him, you could intercept him, you could warn the other disciples, but would it do any good? If Judas does not betray Jesus tonight, the priests will find another way. They have spies everywhere. They know the places where Jesus gathers. The arrest is inevitable. Judas just makes it easier. And here is another truth that torments you. You do not know why Judas did it. The Gospels suggest greed, but 30 pieces of silver was not a fortune. Some historians theorize that Judas was a disillusioned zealot who expected Jesus to lead an armed revolution against Rome. Others believe he thought that the arrest would force Jesus to reveal his divine power and establish his kingdom. Perhaps Judas did not want Jesus to die. Perhaps he hoped to force him to act. But does it matter? The result will be the same. Judas will kiss Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. The guards will arrest him, and afterward, consumed by guilt, Judas will throw the coins into the temple and hang himself. Thursday. It is the night of the Last Supper. Only hours remain. Jesus and his disciples gather in an upper room in a house in Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover Seder. And during that supper, according to the Gospels, Jesus will institute the Eucharist. This is my body, given for you. This is my blood, poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. You are outside, in the dark street, knowing that inside, the foundational moment of Christianity is unfolding. The sacrament that 2 billion people will repeat for 2 millennia. And you also know that in a few hours, Jesus will leave that room, cross the Kidron Valley, and climb the Mount of Olives to pray in Gethsemane. And there Judas will find him. You have one last chance. You could warn the disciples to flee by another route. You could create a distraction when the guards arrive. You could even attack Judas before he gives the kiss of betrayal. But every intervention has consequences you cannot calculate. What if by preventing the arrest tonight, you provoke a more brutal persecution later? What if the Romans, frustrated, massacre the entire community of Jesus' followers? What if by saving Jesus from the cross, you eliminate the event that will transform a group of Galilean fishermen and peasants into the force that will conquer the Roman Empire from within? Midnight, Gethsemane. You are hidden among the olive trees, watching. Jesus prays while his disciples sleep. And then you see the torches approaching. A detachment of temple guards, possibly accompanied by Roman soldiers, and at the front, Judas, the kiss, the arrest. Peter draws a sword and cuts off the ear of a servant of the high priest. Jesus stops him. Do you think I cannot ask my Father to send 12 legions of angels? But he does not. He allows them to bind him. He allows them to take him. And you watch, unable to act, finally understanding something crucial. It is not that you cannot intervene, it is that he does not want you to intervene. According to Christian tradition, Jesus had countless opportunities to escape. He could have fled Jerusalem, he could have avoided the garden, he could have called upon divine power. He chose not to. And that choice is the heart of everything that will come after. Friday dawn, only hours remain. Jesus is brought before the Sanhedrin, the supreme Jewish tribunal of 71 members. The trial is a farce. It is held at night in the house of Caiaphas, violating multiple procedural rules. They seek false witnesses, but they cannot even get their testimonies to agree. Finally, Caiaphas asks directly, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One?" And Jesus answers, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." Blasphemy. The verdict is unanimous. But the Sanhedrin does not have the authority to execute. Only Rome can order death, so they take Jesus before Pontius Pilate. The encounter between Jesus and Pilate is one of the most analyzed moments in history. Pilate, according to the Gospels, finds no fault in Jesus. He tries to release him by offering the crowd a choice between him and Barabbas, a criminal. The crowd chooses Barabbas. Pilate washes his hands, literally declaring, "I am innocent of this righteous man's blood." Historians debate whether this scene is accurate. Pilate was known for his brutality, not his mercy. Some suggest that the Gospels, written after the destruction of Jerusalem by Rome in the year 70, sought to minimize Roman guilt and emphasize Jewish responsibility. The politics of memory are complex, but the result is undeniable. Jesus is flogged, crowned with thorns in mockery, forced to carry his cross through the streets of Jerusalem to Golgotha, the place of the skull. And there, at 9 in the morning, he is crucified between two criminals. Roman crucifixion was designed to maximize suffering and humiliation. The nails pierced the wrists and feet. The victim hung in a position that made breathing difficult, forcing him to push himself up with his nailed feet in order to inhale. Death could take days. Jesus died in approximately 6 hours, a relatively short time. At 3 in the afternoon, according to the Gospels, Jesus cried out, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani?" My God, why have you forsaken me?" And then, "It is finished," and he died. You are there, lost in the crowd, watching the man you could have tried to save die, and the weight of your decision not to act crushes you. But you also know something that no one else there knows. This is not the end, it is the beginning. Sunday, dawn. The women go to the tomb and find it empty. The disciples, hiding in fear of the Romans, begin to report appearances. Jesus risen. And that message, unbelievable, impossible, begins to spread. You survived, you did not intervene, and now you watch as a religion is born. You see Peter, who denied knowing Jesus 3 times during the trial, transform into a rock of faith who will preach until his own crucifixion in Rome. You see the disciples scatter across the known world, carrying the message. Judea, Syria, Asia Minor, Greece, Rome, Egypt, India. And here is the final reflection that will haunt you forever. Did you make the right decision by not intervening? If you had saved Jesus, what would have happened? Perhaps he would have died of old age in Galilee, remembered as one charismatic preacher among many. Perhaps his movement would have dissolved like so many other messianic movements of the era. Perhaps Christianity would never have existed. And without Christianity, what would the world be like? There would be no Catholic Church, no Protestant Reformation, no hospitals founded by monks, no medieval universities, no Renaissance art inspired by biblical themes, no Christian abolitionists fighting against slavery, no civil rights movement led by a Baptist minister named Martin Luther King. But there would also be no crusades, no Inquisition, no wars of religion, no colonization justified by evangelization, no persecution of heretics, no centuries of anti-Semitism culminating in the Holocaust. The death of Jesus set off a cascade of events that transformed human history in ways impossible to calculate. Good and evil, inextricably intertwined. And you, with your knowledge of the future, could not know what changes your actions would cause. This is the most painful lesson of all. Knowledge of the future does not give you the power to improve it. Because the future is not a simple line of cause and effect. It is an infinitely complex web where every action has consequences that extend for millennia. Jesus said, "Whoever wants to save his life will lose it." Perhaps there are truths that can only be born from suffering. Perhaps there are transformations that can only arise from sacrifice. Perhaps tragedy and redemption are inseparable, or perhaps not. Perhaps you were simply a coward who did not dare to act when you could. That doubt will accompany you for the rest of your life in the first century, where you will remain trapped, a silent witness to the birth of a faith that will change everything. What is undeniable is this: 2 billion people today believe that what you witnessed was the most important moment in human history. The moment when God became man, died for the sins of humanity, and rose again to offer eternal life. You were there. You could have changed everything, and you chose not to. Was it faith? Was it cowardice? Was it wisdom? Perhaps all three. Because in the end, in any era, that is all any of us can do: make impossible decisions with incomplete information and live with the consequences. And the consequences of that week in Jerusalem continue to resonate 2,000 years later, every time someone enters a church, every time someone says a prayer, every time someone looks at a cross and remembers the man who died on it. Would you have the courage to wake up in Jerusalem, knowing what was about to happen? Would you try to save Jesus? Or would you stay in the shadows like me, watching as a new world is born from the suffering of a single man? Leave it in the comments. If this video made you reflect on the impossible weight of knowledge and the decisions that define history, hit that like button and subscribe. Until the next video.